We're skipping a lot of chapter 5, not because it's not valuable, but just because of our condensed time frame. So if you're following along in the book, we're jumping straight from that strategic competitive advantage, and we're going to move back to the strategic retail planning process. And so what this video lecture is going to do is really walk through that strategic retail planning process. So first of all, what is that strategic retail planning process? Well, it's a set of steps that the retailer goes through to develop the strategic strategy and plan. Now, in general, the strategic retail planning process happens one time, and it's normally the plan that really starts the retail establishment. There are pieces of the strategic retail plan that are updated every single year. And it's critical that it is updated every single year so that retailers can keep up with the competition and the industry and the market. And so there are 3 things that are mandatory that kind of go into the background information that goes into the strategic retail plan. And so those mandatory elements, which are probably going to look very familiar to you, are the target market segments, the retail mix, and the competitive advantages. And so if you imagine that there is a step 0, which happens before step 1, that would be where these go. All right, so this is the actual process, and this is right from your book, so you've got that in front of you as well. But we're going to walk through these 7 steps in this lecture. So the first step in really developing that strategic retail plan is to define the business mission. Now, the business mission is a very, very broad description of the retailer's objectives and the kind of the scope of the activities that they plan to undertake in their retail business. In general, there are two big pieces of the business mission, or 2 big goals of a retail establishment, and that would be to maximize profits and to impact society. And so with those 2 overarching goals in mind, the business mission is written. Now, there are 5 questions that really should be answered in a mission statement. And I'm not saying that the mission statement should be written in 5 sentences with 1 sentence addressing each of these questions, but very generally speaking, the best mission statements answer these 5 questions. What business are we in? What should our business look like in the future? Who are our customers? What are our capabilities? And what do we want to accomplish? So I challenge you to go out to a few different retailers' websites, go to their About Us page, and normally that's where you'll find their business mission. You'll also sometimes see a mission statement and a vision statement, and those can kind of be grouped together as the business mission. So take a look at some of those retailers. Take a look at large national retail chains. Take a look at single store independent retailers. Take a look at franchise retailers and see what their missions are. And take a look at them to see if they address those 5 questions. And if so, how does the mission statement impact the success of the company in your opinion? So the second step of the strategic retail planning process is to conduct a situation analysis. Now, let's take a second to note that a situation analysis is very different than a SWOT analysis. A SWOT analysis is only one teeny tiny piece of the situation analysis. All right, so a few things that we look at when we conduct a situation analysis. We look at the market and we look at the industry. Right, so if we are going into the quick service restaurant industry, what is happening in that market? Are we seeing an increase in the size of the market on a national level? What does growth look like? So are quick service restaurants, are they growing year over year? Are we seeing more of them enter the market every year? Or are we starting to see a decline in quick service restaurants in the country? A couple other things to look at in a market analysis would be the seasonality of the business and also business cycles. For example, an ice cream store is going to be very, very busy during the summer, but they're going to have a decrease in revenue in the winter months, most likely. Look at the market and the business cycle in Milledgeville. Our local businesses see their busiest months August through April. Why is that? Well, a third of the town leaves from May through July. So it's very important to look at all of those things in a situation analysis to understand how successful or not successful you might be in a specific industry or area. The second piece of that situation analysis is to look at the competitive factors. So who are your competitors? What are your barriers to entry? What does the rivalry look like both nationwide, regionally, and in the location you're going to? A situation analysis also takes a look at environmental factors that might be impacting that business. What are some things happening in the technological industry? How's the economy? What regulations are there impacting your business or your industry? And then finally, we take a look at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And let's remember when we're conducting a SWOT analysis, when we're looking at strengths and weaknesses, we're talking about internal capabilities or things that we have control of. So that might be our management capabilities, what merchandise we carry, where we're located, how we allocate our financial resources. And then if we look at our threats and opportunities, these are things that are really outside of the retailer's control. Things happening in the environment, in the market, with the competition that are impacting our business. So steps 3, 4, and 5, I'm kind of going to put these together. Step 3 is to identify opportunities, to identify strategic opportunities. So if you take a look at the situation analysis you just completed that finished with the SWOT analysis, take a look and identify all of those opportunities that give you, the retailer, a strong competitive position and can help build your competitive advantage. And step 4 is really to evaluate those opportunities. So which ones should you choose to work on to enhance your competitive advantage in the marketplace? And so step 5 is really establishing your objectives and allocating our resources. So this is when we get into actually writing the meat of our plan. So at this point, we are really going to identify what our objective is as a retailer and how we're going to spend our money and how much money we're going to make. So specific objectives are goals against which progress can be measured. And they have 3 components. The performance sought, which is a numerical index, which is generally we want to bring in $1 million in revenue. Right? That's what the performance sought. The second component is the time frame in which the goal can be achieved. Is your goal, do you have a 1-year goal, a 5-year goal, a 20-year goal? And then the third is the level of investment needed to achieve this objective. So an example of an excellent objective would be to achieve a customer base of 1,000 by the end of our first operating year with a budget of $10,000. Now this focuses on a performance that isn't necessarily profit, but how many different customers we want to shop with us. And we're going to spend $10,000 to get those 1,000 customers. Your book walks through a few other examples of objectives that retailers can state in their strategic plans. Step 6 and 7. Step 6 is our tactical actions that the retailer takes. So this is when we fully start fleshing out our retail mix. When we talk about before we begin the retail planning process, when we start to have ideas as a retail entrepreneur, we have an idea of what our 6 Ps are going to be. But this, step 6 of the strategic planning process, is when we really take a look at each of these pieces individually and develop the plan. And so we focus on each of these Ps over the next 3 weeks throughout our modules. And once all that's done and we've executed our strategic plan, it's important to evaluate and adjust. And it's important to evaluate along the way, not just at the end of our plan, whether it's a 1-year, 5-year, or 20-year plan. So if we're meeting our objectives, or if we're on track to meet our objectives, obviously there's no changes needed. Let's just stay the course and make sure we're staying on track to meet those goals. Now, what happens if we're not meeting our objectives? What happens if we are way off track and we're nowhere close to meeting our objectives in the first year or 5 years of the plan? That's not necessarily a reason to panic. It is a reason to do a reanalysis of the plan. And it's not necessarily that you have to start over at step 1, but maybe it starts with a review of your objectives and a look at your retail mix, and to see how you can tweak that to start getting back on track to meet those goals. So that is the strategic retail planning process. And this semester, we really start walking through now how to write goals and how to develop a retail mix for a retailer. We'll also talk about how to analyze a retail mix.